All right, guys, welcome back to another Big Buck Blueprint podcast. We got a good guy from Matt from Central Georgia is what we're going to say. We're not going to disclose his location, and then I'm going to let him say his last name. He's one of those names that's pronounced or spelled a certain way, but it's pronounced a different way. What's your last name, Matt?
Hvizdzak.
Hvizdzak.
Matt
Okay.
Hvizdzak.
Okay, but it starts with an H, Hvizz. So anyway, he's got an absolute hammer. We're switching it up. It feels like we've been stuck on Kentucky deer for like the past, I don't know, no joke, month. I mean, ever since deer season, archery season really kicked off. We were in Tennessee, then now we've just been stuck. I think we cover like 6 deer in Kentucky, just simply because there's just so many big deer hitting the dirt around that time. But we got Ohio's dropping, Georgia's dropping. I saw a giant from Missouri, but we're trying to change it up, get some states, other states, and Georgia in the South. I guess I'll go ahead and say 191 inches is what we're about to talk about. So
Yeah, 191 gross.
yeah, absolute hammer.
Unofficial.
Unofficial. We don't have a BTR score on that. It's just unofficial from the taxidermist, he said. So, but an absolute hammer. So, Matt, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so born and raised in Middle Georgia, Houston County. Grew up farming, grew up with a passion of hunting. And the family land here in Houston County has been in the family since 1786. So, that piece of property is special to me. You know, the biggest, I guess, enjoyment of my life was, chasing squirrels and rabbits as a, 5, 6 year old in the woods. And then dad taking me deer hunting and all that. And just, over that time, developed the passion to chase big, mature, whitetails. That's, pretty much the reason I bought the property I'm on now. The area, it worked out well. And, I love to do it, man. It's 365 days a year, whether it's planting food plots or hanging stands, mineral sites, protein feed. I live to do it. So that's, pretty much who I am.
Yeah, I can tell. I saw your Facebook. So what about your family? You got a wife and kids?
Yeah, my wife of, I believe,
Oh, God.
6 years now.
You better get it
6 years
right.
now is Hannah. We've been together for 10, 12 years, and then 2 beautiful little girls, a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old, and watching them grow up out here on the farm and interacting. And man, my 3-year-old is already obsessed with it. She likes to go through the trail cam pictures. I'm excited for that next step in life is to get her in the woods and hopefully she learns to love it like I do.
Yeah. And like we said, you're not going to beat this deer, I don't believe. It's just so
Yeah.
hard. I mean, it's possible. But so now you got your big deer out of the way, your wall hanger. He's going to put him above the fireplace. And then now you got to get your little ones, got to get them on a good one. But so I'm just going to dive straight into it. This is why people want to be here. Let's talk about this deer. So this is how many points was he? I mean, he was absolute points going everywhere.
So total scoreable points is 16, 8x8. He will more than likely be scored as a non-typical just because the amount of inches he has and some of that trash. I'll actually grab his rack real
Yeah,
quick.
go ahead. Let's go ahead and look at him, and then we'll dive into the story. Good night. That is oh my gosh, I love the chocolate horns, and it's something about those Georgia deer in some areas. Oh,
So, to my understanding, I don't know if it's true or not, but from what I've gathered, what I've read and whatnot, a lot of it has to do with not only what they're eating, but the trees they're using, rubbing and all that stuff is why you see a lot of these chocolate racks down here in South Georgia. But I mean, if you just look at this flyer coming off his G2 right here, I mean, that's, almost probably 6.5 inches, which is awesome, but will be a deduction.
right. It will.
Kicker right here, and coming off the G2 right here on both sides.
The chocolate horns, I do know so like your Midwest, Western states, it's got a lot of sun, no cover, no like tree canopies. That's why they're getting whited out. There's just more sun beating on them, and then those are in pine thickets, thick cut over,
Oh yeah.
CRP type stuff. But that's a hammer, man. Yeah, and I agree. Don't matter what he scores, he's a heck of a deer. You ain't gonna hardly ever beat that, man. It's a heck of a deer. But the difference
No,
now,
it's
what?
it's bittersweet. That reality is kind of setting in now.
It is.
you shoot a deer like that, and it's like, well, I've dreamed of my dream buck my entire life, and I killed him September 27th. It's happened.
Mm.
I've checked that box, and maybe one day I get lucky again, but that's probably going to be it right there. That's
Yeah,
going to be
it's
him.
gonna be hard to beat, but dude, it is possible. Ain't no doubt. So let's go into the story about it, man. Tell us a little bit about how you started when you first got him on camera and started chasing him.
So I'll go back several years to start this off, and we'll cover the whole thing. But we had him as a 2 year old, or was able to identify him as a 2 year old, and right off the bat, knew he was going to be a good deer. Obviously, didn't know what, but he was a good deer. So we put him on the list and kept our eyes on him. He came back as a 3 year old, probably somewhere around 125, 130 inch 3 year old. And, most areas, especially in Georgia, that buck is probably going on a hit list somewhere, because that's, a pretty respectable deer.
Mm-hmm.
But the goal on neighboring properties is to get them at least a 5, if not 6. So, we definitely made sure that he was getting past. Everyone knew who he was. And, rolling to year 4. He came back as a probably almost 150-inch deer. And that would have been my biggest buck,
Yeah.
right there. Uh, so I can't emphasize enough, the how important it is to identify these deer and track them and be able to know their age structure, and then to have property owners around you that are on board, willing to do the same thing you're doing.
No doubt.
And I passed them, last year probably 10 or 15 times, and even as a 150-inch deer, it honestly was easy. It was easy to know if I passed that deer, then and unless natural causes got him, he was going to be passed by surrounding properties, and it made it fun, man, to be able to
Mm-hmm.
watch him, study him. We talked earlier about was I hunting this deer? The answer is yes. All the way up to back to a 3 year old. I was hunting this deer, but not with the intent to kill him. I wanted to know where he was in September. I wanted to know what he was doing in October. What scrapes he was hitting. Where did he like to bed? You know, on certain mornings in November. Um, so I really tried to dial in and study this deer. So yes, I was hunting him, but never with the intent to kill him. And then with going into the 2024 season, I had a really good idea of what he was going to do, as a 5 year old buck. Go back 2 years ago, my brother bought his first bow, and I told him I wanted to get him into bow hunting because I loved it so much, and I have really good, buck killing spots, big buck killing spots, and I obviously did not want to send him in there to shoot a doe, so I hung a set and a camera on probably the most, non-invasive exposed area on the property. And early August, I got a picture of this deer, of Lucky, is what we ended up naming him. But that was huge as far as intel goes, because I wasn't getting him on any other part of the farm, but I got him up here by the barn in an extremely exposed area, feeding in cut corn.
Wow.
And so I made a mental note to that. And then last year did the same thing, and then this year, I had the game plan set, and I had cameras out on the edge of that field, where I knew he was bedding at. And I mean, I think that history and that intel really, makes a big difference as to why I was able to kill him as early as I did.
No doubt. Gosh, that's so impressive to get a deer. How many acres to that age and then to that stature? I mean, to get him in that area of South or Mid Central, wherever you're at, Georgia. I mean, you got to
So
have
it,
everybody
it
else on board for sure.
so I mean, if you want to look at, like, I own a little bit less than 100.
That's what I was
Several
gonna
of
ask.
the neighbors next to me have properties roughly that size. Then we got a couple of big blocks. So all in all, probably about 3,000 acres are being, truly managed with the same goals, sharing pictures, same feed programs. Um, And in terms of what he was doing, he summered here. Um, and then in November, we had him going about a mile and a half, but never left that 3,000 acre block, which was nice.
Yeah,
Again, going back to how nice it is to have those people with the same mindset of you. Because if this was somewhere else, he would have been shot as a 3-year-old probably.
100%.
Um, but what's cool, man, and just studying my property and what's going on with the different mature bucks. As we dialed in on different shooters over the summer, all these bucks, especially this one, really locked down to about a 7 or 8 acre tract of property and wasn't leaving it. There's probably 15, 20 trail cameras that are run, in this area. And he was only showing up on one specific camera, and that was the one on the edge of that, really my dove field. Cut corn. I had some iron clay peas and beans planted in the back for the deer, and then sunflowers. But he was summering in this 7 to 8 acre block of pines and hitting this dove field in the afternoon, and he was not leaving that.
That's crazy.
Um, from August all the way into opening day of bow season. There was a few times he would disappear in July where he would, hit different properties and whatnot. I think doing that early little roundabout that they do late October, November. But no, that's what was cool learning this deer was how locked down they really got in that core area in the summer. And
Right.
that's what I've grown as a bow hunter. I've grown to love hunting big deer early bow season because, in my opinion, that's some of the easiest times to kill them.
Yeah.
They're patterned. They're on that feed pattern. They're not doing anything crazy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love hunting the rut, but the rut's the Wild West. The deer you might be specifically targeting could be 2 miles down the road.
Right.
But yeah, so no, it's a cool story, man. That's what makes this deer really special too, in my mind, is the history with him, growing him, and the chess game.
Yeah.
As I've developed over the years as a bow hunter, and then really the goal of growing these deer and getting them to maturity is really the true passion of mine now. That's what makes this deer so special.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. If I was in Illinois or Iowa and I shot this deer, I'd be freaking
Oh,
jacked.
yeah, no doubt.
But the have the story I do with him and the history I have with him is what makes this one special to
Yeah.
me.
And archery, I mean, that's another big thing that you haven't really touched on. But I mean, I know you spoke about that. You're a hard archery fan. You can't. When's the last time you picked up a rifle? It's been.
Ooh, I don't think I've killed a deer with a rifle in 8 or 10 years.
Yeah, that's impressive, man.
Um, and I have nothing against gun hunters or rifles or
Right.
whatever. They have their place, but I just I guess I got bored with it.
Yeah.
There's something about bow hunting in terms of, I don't know if it's the primitive nature or how personal it becomes with the deer in terms of having to get close, having to get in bow range, having to beat their nose,
No
their
doubt.
eyes,
Hmm.
and again that chess game with that deer in order to get them into bow range. That's what I've grown to love.
Yeah.
Again, not knocking gun hunting at all.
Right.
It's an awesome sport, but I personally, just I love bow hunting.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a 120 pound doe or a 190-inch buck. Like I get jacked up doing it every single time,
Totally.
and that's why we do it.
No doubt, dude. That's impressive. Says a lot, especially in the South. I mean, it's hard to kill a deer like that with your bow down there in South Georgia, or South Alabama,
It's
anywhere in the
tough,
South.
man.
But so yeah, tell us a little about this deer. I mean, I guess you're just roll straight into the hunt. Like what? Break it down for us for that.
So we'll go all the way to opening day. A good friend of mine was actually or his son was getting married. I called him up and I said, "Man,"
Bad time of
I
the
said, "I
year,
hope you're
son.
not." I said, "I hope you're not mad at me." I said, "But I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it to the wedding." And he was like, "Well, why not?" And I said, well, "Let me send you a picture real quick." So I sent it to him. He was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You don't need to come. You need to be in a tree stand."
That's good.
So opening day, it was actually, I don't know how it was, in the rest of the country, but in middle Georgia, it was comfortable, man. I think it was mid 70s, good breeze. Everything was lined up to, kill a big deer. The weather was good, the wind was good, and I had him come out, within bow range, right there at dark. Knew it was him. It was still in, probably 3 or 4 minutes left of legal light. Yeah, I could have taken that shot, but with a deer like this, I just did not feel comfortable. Making a bad shot, hitting him in the shoulder, or that no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
That early in the season and with questionable light, I didn't feel good about it. I mean, I came to full draw on him, had him in my peep sight, but I'm sure if you're a bow hunter, you
No
know what I'm
doubt.
talking about, the
Exactly.
haze and all that. It just
Mm-hmm.
so I elected to pass him, and I sat there for probably 30 minutes and let him feed out of there, and then 2 days later. Uh, Same situation. Saw him probably 30 minutes before dark, and just was taking his sweet time getting to me. And if you're from Alabama, you know that the winds over here in South Georgia, it may say a west wind, but it could be east for 5 minutes, north, south. It was all over the place. So it swirled on me. He got a little bit skittish, and didn't bust out of there, but he knew something wasn't right. So
Yeah.
he eased on out. And after that, he went nocturnal for uh, when I say nocturnal, he was showing up right there at dark for a month. But for the first time, it was 11 o'clock. It was midnight, 1 o'clock, and I was like, well,
I messed
damn, I've
up.
done screwed him
Yeah.
up. So I stayed out of there for probably 3 or 4 days and didn't really mess with him until the weather got right again. And September 26th, that hurricane rolled through here. And I mean, we got in terms of that hurricane, man, we got lucky. We were supposed to be, pretty much squared right up on it, and you know, thankfully for us, I'm sure you've seen videos of East Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee. I
Mm-hmm.
hate it for those people, but thankfully for us, it kind of shifted east, and we really didn't get damaged too badly. But I knew after that hurricane, I kept my eyes on the camera all night long. I knew with that hurricane, he didn't get a chance to get up and feed. And we also had that cold front come in. I think temperatures dropped about 10 or 12 degrees. I knew that was a good night
Right.
to be in the stand. So I had, full intentions of hunting. And I got this phone call, man, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Kind of made my, heart sink a little bit. But it was, one of my neighbors doing food plots. And he said, dude, I just jumped lucky 10 yards from the tractor. He's like he said he's better about 150 yards from your stand, but he got up and took off. I don't know where he went. So I was like, damn it, man! Like
Yeah.
I felt really good about that afternoon, and after that phone call, it kind of I was torn on what I wanted to do, and another buddy was coming to hunt an old 8 point that we have. And if it wasn't for him coming to hunt that deer, I would have probably gone after that deer and left Lucky alone. But we sat there and talked for a little while, and he said, "Man," he said, "crazy things always happen when a big buck gets killed."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "You're right." I said, "You're right." I said, "I'm gonna go sit up there," and went, climbed up in the stand. Still didn't feel super optimistic, and I mean, it was early. It was right there about 7:30. I had a 4 point, a 6 point, an 8 point, and a couple of does out in the beans feeding. And I stood up and drew back on the 8 point, just to, get the blood flowing, get loose, get something in my sight. And no sooner did I let down, I looked up and he was stepping out of the woods 150 yards across from me. And you want to talk about heart coming out of the chest, legs going numb, like
God bless.
I hung my bow up, and I'm not lying to you. I turned around and I grabbed onto the tree and I said a little prayer, and then I was trying to calm down, deep breaths, relax, just like shooting a doe. And I mean, for about 30 seconds, I was really trying to calm myself down. At that point, it was probably 80 yards from me. And he came straight in on those bucks. Obviously, that was his food plot. He didn't want them there. Ran those bucks off, and he was feeding right there in front of me at 17 yards. And was kind of quartering to me. And, I stood up, I had my bow in my hand, I was locked on and everything. And I killed a good buck last year with a slight quarter in two. But I don't like that shot. Usually that's a long liver gut, a deadly shot, but not ideal.
Right.
Um, so I told myself, I said, just be patient, give him a second. He'll get, in a different spot, and you'll get the shots you want. And man, he stood in that spot for probably 3 or 4 minutes feeding and never turned, didn't walk in any direction. He was just in that spot. And then about that time, sun setting, and I feel the wind on my back.
Oh gosh.
And yeah, you just terror, sat in, and he picked his head up, looked around. You could tell it was uneasy, and he looked down to the barn. And as soon as he looked down to the barn, which was on the opposite side of me, I knew it was now or never. So I drew back, and I'm probably 25, 20, 28 feet up in that tree. He's 17 yards under me, so I know I need to aim a little bit higher for that better angle. So I put it about where his back strap is, and right there behind the shoulder, and let it ride.
Mm.
And man, absolutely smoked him.
Heck yeah.
Went in, complete pass through, and honestly, like the whole thing is a little bit of a blur. Like that whole adrenaline kicks in, and I remember him running off through the field, and right about before he gets to that tree line, probably 20 yards before he gets to that tree line, that back end starts going out. And when I saw that, it made me feel
Oh
a
man.
million times better.
Whew.
And so that back end starts, going out, and he dives into the woods. Don't see him anymore. And I mean, I stood there for probably a minute or two, just trying to take it all in.
Yeah.
Just an absolute unbelievable feeling for
I mean, you've been hunting your
four
whole
years.
life, but you've been hunting your whole life. Imagine that. Just think about that. I mean, you're how
Oh
old are
yeah,
you? How are you?
35.
35. You've been hunting your whole life. I mean, you've shot some good deer, but it's like that just happened. It's such a surreal moment. I've shot good deer, obviously nothing this size, but I can only imagine the feeling. So yeah, you soaking it up.
I mean, well, it's like people who get into hunting when they're young or whatnot. You grow up as a boy hunting, and you're looking at Buckmasters,
Yes.
and watching all the old VHS
Uh
cassette
huh.
tapes, and all, and like it's like, man, one day, like, how cool would it be to kill a buck like that?
Right.
And even as a grown man now, laying in bed at night, it's like the dreams,
Yes.
the daydreams and whatnot of killing a giant like that. So it was so surreal, man. And like it took honestly 3 or 4 days for it to really sink in. Not only killing a buck that I've been watching for the last 4 years,
Yeah.
but killing a buck of this magnitude.
On your land.
Never in my wildest dreams did. If you would have looked at me and said, Matt, you're gonna kill a 190, I would have laughed at you.
Yeah.
And if you would have said that and I believed you, I would have thought, well, maybe in Iowa or
Yeah.
Illinois or
Yeah.
Ohio. But to tell me I was going to kill a 190 on my farm in Middle Georgia, it just, it's crazy to believe. I've killed good deer. I've killed some, a lot of decent deer in my life. My goal was a 150 or 160 would have been,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, life changing deer. But for it to be a 191-inch deer, it just was absolutely mind blowing.
So you do a self recovery. You do call the buddies. You get your kids. What'd you
Oh
do?
yeah, dude. My wife looked at me, and that's a love-hate relationship during hunting season.
It is.
And so I got to give it to her, because with 2 young kids, I was really trying to be, mindful of how much I was going to be in the woods, especially this early. Because I mean, I'm someone who hunts 70, 80, 90 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the one that kept saying, "Go after him, go get him." She said, I want this story to be done. I want it to happen. She said, just, I better be the first person you call.
Yeah.
So I called her, and, she put my little 3-year-old on the phone and said, Daddy got lucky. And Emma was probably more jacked up than I was. So they came, they came home, called all my buddies, dad, brothers, and we got there, and from then on out, it was a celebration, man. We gave them about, I don't know, it's probably 2.5, 3 hours. I know I made a good shot. There was blood on the arrow, but because of the angle, there was gut on the arrow.
Yeah.
And then there wasn't great blood from where he ran into the woods because, and we confirmed this, but we believe the guts were clogging that hole.
Mm-hmm.
And the entry, was extremely high. So that entire chest cavity would have to fill up with blood before he started leaking out of that hole. So we didn't feel great about the blood. We gave him 3 hours, and then we went in there. I've got a couple of recovery videos, but I mean, he was dead as a hammer when we got to
Oh,
him.
gosh.
Stiffens, and that was it.
Yeah.
So he didn't go probably another 15, 20 yards from where he started shaking at, and he was piled up in there. And like I said, man, it was a celebration after that. I don't think I got in bed until 5:30, 6 o'clock
I'd still
the
be
next
celebrating
morning.
that, man. I'd be, oh my gosh, y'all know you're on cloud nine. That is so cool. On your own land, though, that's another thing. Just add, I mean, less than 100 acres, right there. By, I mean, you planted the peas. You got your corn, like you planted, did all that, all the work. I mean, in your stand, if what was it, a lock on? Was it just a ladder stand? I don't know if you said
Yeah, no,
that.
I hunt out all lock-ons, but that lock-on is probably, I mean, put it this way: when I'm sitting in that stand, I can watch my girls play in the front yard.
That's impressive. That's so cool.
Um, like I said, it was a stand designed to be, non-intrusive. Let people come out and shoot does,
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully if they fall in the field, it's an easy track, and I'm not down in my core areas. And go back 2 years, man, and when I first picked that deer up in that field, I made a mental note of it. And I was
Yeah.
like, I'm shocked he's up here, but I'm gonna remember this.
Yeah.
And so all that came into play 2 years later, when it was actually time to harvest them.
But it
Um,
goes to show though for people listening, there's so many stories I hear of this. I mean, so he was right behind your house. I mean, they'll bed in your backyard, you guys. I mean, if y'all
oh,
don't know that
absolutely.
and see that, I mean, it's where you least expect it. So a tip, I mean, I've seen so many times and I've done it myself. If y'all are way back here on the back line, you're like, he's here. I know he's here. Move your camera and you start losing him. Move your camera. Keep it moving. Check it. I mean, do inventories, glass, whatever you got to do, but look in those places that you'd least expect. That's another thing. Those deer will lay so low, they will lay. I have seen them. Their bottom jaw be on the ground. They're laying so low, and they will just be within the grass. I mean, they'll lay so low. If you can ride right by them, walk right by them, and they know who you are, what you're doing.
Oh yeah.
But you've got those little tricks, those little, man, keep it moving. You got to switch it, especially in that first of the season when velvet's dropping, they're getting territorial. They're trying to have their domains figured out, but they're bouncing around. That's a heck of a story, dude. That's a heck of a
That's
deer.
that's probably one of the because I always obviously want to better myself in terms of being a hunter and a manager of properties. But what he taught me there with him locking down on such a small piece of property, and I had cameras. I mean, I had cameras within 125, 150 yards from where he was, showing up every single night for a month. Try to find a scrape, try to find a trail, because I was running 7 or 8 cameras at that time, and I was only getting them on one camera on my entire property.
That's so
And
cool.
he just was not moving. I mean, he found his core area. That's where he wanted to be, and to find him.
It's
So that's
incredible.
that's huge, man.
Incredible story, Matt. Man, I hope you kill it. Another one bigger. I hope you break that record. I really do. I'm rooting for you, but I don't. I hate to be negative, but I don't think it's going to happen in Georgia.
No,
That's
no, you're
hard to
probably right.
beat, man. I hope you do. But now I guess focus on your kids. Now your wife, get her a Target gift card or TJ Maxx if she's like my wife, and just let her go have her little evenings. You're spoiled. You just get to sit back now the rest of the season, and I guess take your
I'm about to
kids and
say that. My wife is probably happier than I am because
yeah,
she knows that
yeah.
I'm gonna dial it back. I'm gonna take it easy the rest of the season. I might go out and get a couple of does for the freezer, but in terms of hunting hard and grinding, it's probably pretty much done for the year.
Well, Matt, we greatly appreciate you sharing your story, and if you ever kill another one as big or bigger, you know who to call. So We'd love to hear the story. But, man, we greatly appreciate it, and I think that'll conclude. Anything else you want to add?
No, man, I appreciate y'all having me on. One thing again, emphasizing is, if you can identify an age of a deer and have the, self control to pass that deer, there's no telling what he grows into. And then having, neighbors around you with the same mindset. Um, you know, Thankfully, and in my opinion, and you probably see it more than I do, I think QDMA has really taken off,
Mm-hmm.
especially in my area with, I think that the knowledge is out there, the intel's out there, the information, social media, people are seeing, okay, if I let these deer grow, I could have a chance at a really big deer one day.
No doubt.
So I think that's being done, and hopefully, that continues to progress.
I hope so, man. I hope this was a good podcast for our listeners, and maybe they can learn something from it. And y'all ask any questions y'all want in the comments. Hope you watch plenty more of these. We're going to have plenty more coming to you. And if there's a particular state y'all want us to cover a deer on, then let us know. But Georgia, there's one down. I think that's our first Georgia deer we've ever covered on these podcasts. So, but Matt, we appreciate it. Greatly do. We'll see y'all next on the next Big Buck Blueprint podcast.